Welcome to 21st Sports. We're talking about Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars in their Week 3 matchup played September 25th, 2016. And this was a tough game to watch. It got really ugly. Unless you like turnovers. If you like turnovers, especially if you like fourth quarter turnovers, then this was the game for you. But in the first quarter, the only score we saw in the first was a 7-yard touchdown run by Joe Flacco, and that put the Ravens up early 7-0. Then in the second quarter, Justin Tucker hit a 43-yard field goal that made it 10-0 Ravens over the Jaguars. But then Blake Bortles hooked up with Allen Robinson for a 3-yard touchdown, and that got Jacksonville on the board and cut the Ravens' lead to 3 with the score 10-7. And then just as the first half was expiring, the time on the clock in the first half, Justin Tucker hit a 42-yard field goal to make it a 6-point lead as he extended their lead by 3. As the score was 13-7, Ravens over the Jags at halftime. Then in the third quarter, Tucker hit his third field goal of the game, a 37-yarder, and that made it 16-7 as the Ravens were now up by 9. But then Allen Robinson caught his second touchdown from Blake Bortles. This one an 11-yard touchdown pass, and it was a 2-point game with the score Baltimore 16, Jacksonville 14. So that was the score heading into the fourth quarter. And midway through the fourth, Jason Myers gave the Jaguars their first lead of the game, courtesy of a 49-yard field goal, as the Jags were now up by 1 point, 17-16. And it looked like they might actually win a game, but it was all for naught. As the fourth quarter, as I said, a lot of turnovers, 3 consecutive possessions. The Jaguars forced turnovers, but they only got the 3 points out of it, that 49-yard field goal. And the Ravens, they actually forced a couple of turnovers as well, as they were able to pick off Blake Bortles. And they also blocked a field goal attempt by Myers, which ended up setting up the 54-yard field goal by Justin Tucker with a minute left. That was Tucker's 4th field goal of the game, and it gave the Ravens back the lead, up by 2 with the score 19-17. And then another turnover. This one, the second fourth quarter interception thrown by Blake Bortles, and that was all she wrote. So we saw 5 turnovers in the fourth quarter, including also, not to mention, the blocked field goal. But what a wild finish, and really that was a tough loss for Jacksonville. It looked like they might actually pull it out. Even though the Ravens were in control early on in this game, they almost let this one slip away from them. But the Ravens pull off the road victory, and look at Baltimore. They're 3-0, undefeated in 2016. And the Jags, they're winless as they're 0-3. So things are not looking good in Jacksonville, but they are definitely looking good in Baltimore as their defense keeping this game within range. The offense not really doing a lot for the Jaguars, but they did enough. And even with those turnovers, they still were able to come away with the victory as their defense also forced in turnovers. But Joe Flacco on the day, 29 for 40, 214 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He did rush for a touchdown, though. He had 3 carries for 12 yards. Blake Bortles, 24 for 38, 194 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2 of which came in the fourth quarter, and he actually was tied for the leading rusher for the Jags, as Bortles and TJ Yeldon both had just 17 yards rushing. Bortles 3 carries, Yeldon 6 carries. And the leading rusher in the game was West with 10 carries for 45 yards for Baltimore. The leading receiver, Steve Smith, 8 receptions, 87 yards. And for Jacksonville, Allen Robinson, 7 catches for 57 yards, including a pair of touchdowns. And for the defense for the Ravens, Orr with the interception. Of course, that was tipped into his hands. C.J. Mosley also had an interception, a pair of sacks for T.J. Suggs. Guy also had a sack, and Jernigan had a sack as well. Young also had an interception for the Ravens. And for the Jaguars, Paul Posluszny had an interception, as did Gibson. And Jackson had a sack, as well as Nku, which I'm definitely butchered his name, and I apologize. But you can let me know about it in the comments section. First downs, 18-14 in favor of the Ravens. On third down, Jacksonville 6 of 16, 37% conversion rate. Baltimore just 3 of 13 on third down, 23%. They went for it once on fourth. They did convert. Total net yards, 283 for Baltimore, 216 for Jacksonville. As both teams really were struggling to get anything going offensively. Penalties in this game, 8 against the Ravens, 7 against the Jags. But even though they had one less penalty, Jacksonville 75 penalty yards versus just 58 penalty yards for the Ravens. The Ravens actually had a pair of fumbles. They recovered one and they lost one. In the red zone, Jacksonville was actually 100%, 2 for 2. Baltimore 1 for 2. They were 50%. They did win the battle of the time of possession, 31 minutes and 6 seconds to 28 minutes, 54 seconds for Jacksonville. Like I said, it was a crazy fourth quarter, all those turnovers, and the special teams with that blocked field goal definitely came into play as the Ravens somehow, some way figure out how to get the victory. And that's the thing, when you have a culture of winning, you find how to win games. When you have a culture of losing, you find ways to lose games. And that's kind of what happened here in the fourth quarter. It's the Ravens, although they haven't had a lot of victories in the last couple seasons, they are a franchise that has won the Super Bowl before. They're a team that, the playoffs are always their goal heading into every season. Whereas Jacksonville, they've had one of the worst records year in, year out, regardless of the coach. Gus Bradley, again, he has actually the worst record of any coach who's coached 50 games in his tenure, and you can only wonder how many days he will actually be around there in Jacksonville. Wouldn't be surprised to see him be the first coach to go in what inevitably is always a carousel in the NFL. Once, we get some games underway and an 0-3 start, it's not looking too good in Jacksonville. It seems to be the same old Jags. But the Ravens definitely out to a good start this season. Things are looking bright in Baltimore for sure. Undefeated. Not a lot of people would have expected that necessarily out the gates, but a strong start for the Ravens. Can they continue to rack up the victories? Well, we shall see. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Which plays and performances stuck out to you? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.